Good morning. Today we're talking about density and distribution. So what this is a way of trying to classify populations of organisms and how closely they live together and in where you're going to find them, either close together or far apart. So let's just take a look at some of these pictures that I've got. So the distribution where you can find animals can vary. So what area are you talking about here? And by that, so what area are we looking at? What I mean there is it the side of a tree? And we're looking at some bugs that are just on one side of a tree? Are we looking at the size of a local park? Are we looking at a whole state or continent? So these areas can be small. They could be large. But the other question is, do they have borders? Is there something that's confining that area? Or is it wide open? In this particular picture up here, you see that there's a fence that's keeping these horses in one area. So I know what area I'm looking at. In this one here, it's a little bit more broad. These are termite mounds, but they're kind of spread out throughout this whole ecosystem. So are there borders? Do I have to figure out what area I'm talking about? So that's just the introduction to this idea of density and distribution. Now, if we move this, we've got a couple of other pictures here. We're just going to focus on this term of density. Density gets used a lot in science. In this particular case, what I'm talking about is how many individuals, so individual organisms, because it could be animals or plants, how many individuals per area? And we would have to define that area. Now in this picture here, there's a couple of grizzly bears. You can see them wandering on the road, but then you see this huge landscape out behind them. So this is low density. Meaning there's not a lot of individuals, right? And the ones that are there are spread out. So individuals are very spread out. Of course, again, that depends on the area that we're talking about. They could still have low density, even if we're talking about a teeny tiny little area, or whether that area is the size of Alaska. Now down here, it looks a little different. This is an example of high density. And this is called a bait ball. There's just a whole bunch of fish. This could be like sardines or something that these fish school together for safety. Now in high density, the individuals are very close together. How close together are they? That depends on what organisms we're talking about and what do we mean by close together. So these are, again, just guidelines. So that was the density. Now let's look at distribution, how you're going to find them. And I've got 3 examples up here. The first one is uniform. And with uniform, you'll see that they are evenly spaced. There is a pattern. Oops. You see it a lot. They have this image here, which isn't the best image of uniform, but you see it a lot with bird nests, like bird nests that are on the ground in particular, where there's going to be even distribution and they're going to all be the same distance apart from each other. That's uniform. And from above, you can usually see this pattern that develops. The next one is random. In this case, it's irregular spacing. So there doesn't seem to be a pattern to it. It would be haphazard. That's another term for that. And you see this mostly with plants because it's somewhat random where you're going to find plants growing, because they could have been dispersed on the wind, or they could have been carried randomly by animals or other pollinators. So they tend to be found in irregular spacing, like the image here with the dandelions. And then finally, the last one is clumped. And what we see in clumped, it's kind of like that bait ball that we had, that school of fish. These are grouped into patches. And there might be multiple patches. So in the image up here, it's just showing you one patch, but there might be multiple patches where these are all clumped together. And you don't see any individuals between clumps. Okay, so that's just a quick introduction to density and distribution of populations. Thank you very much.